Jongste der wereldmerken. Peter Stuyvesant. Rijke.
Hey guys, it's Matt. The title of this episode is Paid and Threatened. Paid and Threatened. See, when things didn't make sense in terms of all these people and all these different events that would have to be, quote, in on it, we asked the good segment of the truth community, how is this possible to keep pulling this stuff in all different areas? Not just bang events, all different areas. They keep pulling it off time after time. And a segment of the truth community for roughly 8 years kept coming back to me saying the same thing, only what fit in to their bookends of known reality. They would say paid and threatened, the way you could basically pull a string out of their back and they would say, let me pull the string, crank it up. And instead of the monkey banging the cymbals together, they would say, paid and threatened, 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 paid. It sounds like patent. But see, the problem is, once you have well over 1 million people that would need to be perfectly paid and threatened to stay quiet and nothing being leaked, you get into something called a reality breakdown. And that's kind of where we've been for years. And the old explanations that fit inside the bookends don't really work anymore. I kind of said about 3 years ago, they don't work, and they certainly don't work anymore, and they certainly don't work today. So we're going to get into the topic, looking at all these events, how everybody must have been, of course, paid and threatened. Let's start with a story that I'll relate into this presentation as the presentation goes on. It's a little restaurant some of you may have heard of called McDonald's. Not McDowell's, McDonald's. Some of you may have even been in one. And in the early 70s, they passed supposedly 1 billion served. Remember those signs? Well, you have to be around 50. Over 1 billion served. And they were real effing proud of this in the mid-70s. I mean, you couldn't go past a McDonald's where the sign under the golden arches wouldn't say 1 billion served. They all flew that banner for years and years and years. Under the golden arches, it wasn't an electronic sign. It was just the old white lit up with fluorescent lights. The guy would have to get out there with a ladder and put the new black letters on. They didn't put the specials. They didn't put how many hamburgers you could get for $1. They didn't put any perverted action that Ronald McDonald was up to and what he's doing with Grimace, the Hamburglar. They didn't put in any of that stuff in this sign. For years, they just were so proud of themselves. 1 billion served. And if the Freedom of Information Act existed at the time, I mean, there could have been a lawsuit on behalf of vegan groups that would have forced McDonald's out of that 1 billion served, forced McDonald's in a fine print somewhere to say how many of those billion got violently ill. I was one of them. I don't think it's appropriate to tell that story, but it literally involves the McDonald's in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's about 25 minutes between exits on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And me having to literally scream at my buddy driving back up to Penn State that he has to screech the wheels, stop the car, and Matt will get out of the car and literally run up the hill. No more needs to be said. And about that story, I'm not joking in any way. I almost had to turn the car around and go back to Philly. We made it. It was no more. It was real, though. This is real. Now, I've been back to McDonald's since, and it's been okay. But at the same time, unfortunately, before the internet, somebody started a campaign when McDonald's was flying their sign under the golden arches all across the country, 1 billion served. Some guy got the great idea to put together a campaign, a sign campaign, where it would say 1 billion served. Yeah, but what was served? Prove what it is. His notion was it wasn't meat. There was no way to scientifically test what it was. Sure, 1 billion were served something, but what was it? I mean, their default is beef, but he was saying, no, it's not. It's something else. It's something that can't be scientifically determined. And if the internet would have existed back in the mid-'70s, this guy, he would have had millions and millions of people coming to his site, but all he could do is ask people to fly signs and banners and yard signs, people that lived across the street from McDonald's, and the sign would say 1 billion served. Yeah, but of what? And it didn't go anywhere either. Let's continue with our premise. 1 million apparently paid and threatened. So the concept here is simple. I'm going to list the largest fake events that would have involved the most people having to be quiet or be in on it or not talk or not leak anything. And even if I'm wrong about half of these events, and these are all fake, we're not wrong about any of these at this point. They've been researched over and over in this community. But even if I'm wrong by half, it's still like 800,000 people that would have to be paid and in on it, paid and in on it, paid and threatened, paid and threatened, paid and threatened, paid and in on it. No leaks, no tweets, no emails. Didn't tell their wife, didn't tell their girlfriend. She didn't tell, that shampoo commercial, and so on and so on and so on. At some point, it becomes, if anybody doesn't know where I'm going with this, a reality breakdown where what's going on, how this is covered up, doesn't fit within the bookends of known reality. And even though I've made at least part of this presentation at least 5 times over 5 years, something like that, there's still a segment of people here in the truth community that will just keep telling me the same thing. Paid and threatened, paid and threatened. And it's time to finally blow this out of the water. I don't, if somebody comes to me and says, literally, Tommy Lee Jones comes in with a pen and people don't remember being involved in the event, that's more believable to me than every single person, 1 million served, 1 million having to be in on it. That's more palatable to me. Will Smith as the devil in A Winter's Tale with a Men in Black pen erasing minds after a bang event, that's more palatable to me than telling me 1 million people are perfectly paid and threatened. So the king of the fake events is Chuck P. over and over again. And I don't know what he thinks. I hope he's not in the paid and threatened posse. I don't want to make enemies with him. He's the king of tracking the fake events. He's come forward with fake events that I didn't even know existed, let alone fake. And as I looked into him, it looks like he's right about every one of them. So in other words, we know, these events, like we'll have to use the hobo code, of course, like right now for my nerves, I'm going to put my fingers, take my pulse. I'm going to take my pulse. Oh, it's pretty good still. It's not too high. And, or you could, somebody came forth a while back, and I think this is funny shit, called it the Legolas, the Legolas event. And that's real esoteric. The Legolas event. People go, what? The actor in Lord of the Rings 1, 2, and 3, Orlando Bloom, his first name, the actor Orlando Bloom, he played Legolas in Lord of the Rings. So that's how hobo we need to get, the Legolas event. So for each one, you have to add up all the people that had to be in on it, would have to know something was pulled off, and then just add the numbers up till you get to 1 million served. And, I think you could keep a lid on 5,000 or 6,000 people. I don't think you can keep a lid on 1 million people. So we need to think around 2 corners and eliminate the reality bookends to just get any kind of a sense as to what might be going on. And for anybody that's screaming at this presentation, this is a screen exercise. It absolutely is a screen exercise, trying to understand how the screen does business. But there's still several people here that they can't fully understand themselves till they understand the levels of manipulation the screen and its minions go through in order to get you to think you're something else. So the screen exercises, as I've said many times, are necessary. And in this case, they're fun. Let's just have fun with the Legolas event. And there's probably some people that are disagreeing with the basic premise. They're like, what are you talking about, Willis? 1 million people have to be in on it? Where are you getting those numbers, Kimosabi? Yeah, I'll show you. You just sit down and shut up. I'll show you how we get easily to 1 million people having to be in on it, starting with the Debbie Does Dallas event. And don't forget the point. How many people per event have to be in on it? Know something happened that's not presented on TV. Know that the Warren Commission finding is complete BS. And it doesn't matter if you believe my premise here or not. If my premise is it was an episode of Guiding Light. Nothing happened, but I ain't getting into that. Okay, that's the evidence to me is overwhelming. But even if you believe, nobody believes the official story. I mean, even people outside of these circles really anymore don't believe that little old boy Lee Harvey Oswald did it alone. I mean, come on, man. We don't go over that shit again. But they'll believe that Castro did it. They'll still believe a giant conspiracy. They'll still believe the Russians were involved. They'll still believe the mob was involved because of what RFK was doing. They'll believe the military-industrial complex did it because Kennedy was going to pull out of Vietnam. They'll believe elements inside the Federal Reserve did it because he was going to audit the Fed. Come on, remember the last video? If something sounds like a fairy tale, all those wonderful things JFK was going to do, if it sounds like a fairy tale, it is a fairy tale. You know, Rob Lowe, if you're going to act like a baby, I'm going to treat you like a baby. It's that simple. But it doesn't matter, because whether you believe Castro did it, then you still have all of the. You have to add up thousands and thousands of people that have to be in on it. How about how every so many years, what is it, every 10 years, the U.S. government says they're going to release all this information? Who has the information? Of course, under the Trump administration, they're going to release all this stuff came out about JFK that told us nothing. I mean, what the Q people, those Q geniuses say about that? You have all the people on the ground that day at the Debbie Does Dallas Plaza, the entire Dallas police force. Matt, the entire Dallas police force would need to be in on it. Have you ever heard of compartmentalization, you son of a bitch? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. You know, you talk on the fly. Sometimes the words coming out of your mouth aren't always the best, but the general point, I'm going to get this general point again across accurately, even if you disagree with some of my findings or some of my assumptions. You have, of course, the Secret Service. Think any of them would need to be in on it in terms of what happened? Well, Matt, they would only need to be in on it if your fantasy story is true. Okay, but then after the fact, all the oh boy, fight in the hallway again. Hey, stop it! No, Mom, making a video. I don't want meatballs right now. Zara, stop it. I'm sorry. It's very professional here. Okay, so if there's a real corpse, then the Secret Service isn't going to be involved in who really did it, not Lee Harvey Oswald. But guys, you're looking at over what is it, roughly 60 years, basically, and how many people? I mean, the point is they're still coming forward, saying the Warren Commission findings are the official story is still saying the Warren Commission findings are accurate. I mean, Senator Specter, the retarded Forrest Gump senator from Pennsylvania, Specter, came forth with a magic bullet theory, and people believed it. What? A bullet went this way and that way, and through Connolly's what, and out his what, and into what? It's a joke, but okay. So one of the things that the numbers get so large very quickly about the Debbie Does Dallas event, no matter what you believe, is the amount of time that's going on, the amount of people that have touched some paperwork or been involved in some way. You're looking at, for 60 years, you're looking at tens of thousands, if not much, much more. Heck, they let Jesse Ventura, in his investigative reporting genius, get up into the Texas Book Suppository building, and he went off and tried to replicate the shot and fired shots because he's some marksman or something from the jungles of Costa Rica with Schwarzenegger and Predator. So, just in this from a time perspective, the Kennedy thing, if there's any event ever where people are accurately paid and threatened, then I would say, okay, I'll give you that one. But you'll see as we move into these other events, you just get into too many people, too many situations. The paid and threatened thing doesn't work anymore. Well, Matt, then what is it? Okay, maybe at the end we'll talk about what it is. If it's a matrix and a reality generation machine, it can do whatever it wants. It can send its Will Smiths and Tommy Lee Joneses out with their pens. I don't know, but maybe we'll talk about it at the end. The premise here is simple, that paid and threatened don't work no more. And join me as we journey through time, through fake events. You, your alcoholic beverage, Matt, put your feet up, stoke the fire, and we'll continue through a trip down memory lane, yesteryear, looking at fake events over time. Let's get into a little old event called NASA missions. NASA mission. Oh, what are we talking about here? Mercury missions, Gemini missions, Apollo missions, hundreds of thousands, involved, employees, contractors, news media, actors. I mean, the Apollo and the NASA missions alone since the mid-'60s, and it's just a complete reality breakdown how so many people were involved and nobody went anywhere. I've had people email me and tell me how their grandfather worked on a certain capsule and module. Well, I'm sure they did. It didn't mean it went anywhere, but to keep it, to have that level of secrecy where to this day most people walking down the street believes somebody got into a tuna can and went somewhere, to have that still holding up is not human. Okay. And for anybody, few people screaming at this presentation, I can predict what you're going to say. And this is an accurate objection, saying, who do you think you are? You presenter, narrator, son of a bitch. Who do you think you are? Maybe, you ever think this one, Mr. Narrator, that you got it wrong? That there doesn't have to be millions and millions of people in on it, and you just got it wrong, and we actually did go to the moon, and these things are actually real, and you're in your little fantasy land. You should be put in with into that insane asylum with Jeffrey and 12 monkeys. If you're screaming at me for that, I understand. Because it is almost inconceivable how this many people would have to be in on it. Okay, but I'm telling you, for somebody stumbling upon this video screaming at me, we've researched these things over and over and over again, where not only is there one or two impossible occurrences or something that makes the event fake, each of these events have hundreds of things that can't possibly happen, impossible coincidences, occurrences, things that point and prove that the entire event is 100% hoax, completely fake. So we're not going to do this again for the space missions. I mean, it's obvious at this point. Nobody got into a tuna fish can and went anywhere. We've been over this stuff. The LEM lands on the moon. I mean, where's the 300-pound heating and air conditioning system that would need, it's 200 degrees in the sun, minus 200 in the shade? Where's the battery unit or the electricity generation that could power the necessary air conditioning, even if you don't believe the LEM needs a 300-pound unit attached to it? Well, what powered the air conditioning in each spacesuit? They would only have access to the equivalent of some sort of battery pack, something of which a Duracell D battery today is probably far superior. You know how much energy it takes to power an air conditioning unit for a spacesuit that could push back on plus 200 degrees in the sun? Do you know how much 220 was there a 220 outlet in the dust of the moon that they were able to plug into that I don't know about? The electricity needed to power the suits alone. Matt, they had batteries for the suits. Come on. You have no idea how much electricity air conditioning needs. And we're talking about in Florida when it's 92 degrees and humid, not plus 200 in the sun. So this isn't worth talking about anymore. Nobody went anywhere. Nobody goes anywhere. The point is, in terms of keeping all these people in on it, and I understand compartmentalization. I understand the guy that made the toilet flusher in the command module, just all he knows is how to make the toilet flush in the command module, and he thinks it really is up there. And I'm well aware of compartmentalization, but still, you can't compart. If you could, actually, I'll take that back. If they did compartmentalize hundreds of thousands of people, and now if you take it through the shuttle programs, there's your million right there. We're already at 1 million. We don't have to do the other events. Through Space Force today, all the people that would need to be in on it, in projecting a fake ISS. There ain't no big-haired women flying around up there with their 14,000 cans of Aquanet. If you want to if you want to take what we're talking about now and project that through the ISS and the current fake space of today, like Space Force, we're already over 1 million in on it. That's it. So to compartmentalize those people perfectly is not human. It is a non-human intelligence, in my opinion, working with a reality that is far more fluid and malleable than you would think. So maybe we just go home now. We're over 1 million, and I've got a whole list of other things, but don't worry, we'll go over the other list. Because we're already reached 1 million, we can just have fun with the rest of the list. Talk about things like the Legolas event. One more thing about space. I like the movie The Right Stuff. I'll still watch The Right Stuff, even though I don't believe any of it. The same way I'll watch Star Trek: The Next Generation. I don't think Picard's out there either with an entity on board named Q battling the board, but I like watching it, so I like The Right Stuff. But just think of it. If you've seen The Right Stuff, it's the personal view of what the fake astronauts had to go through in their testing and training and their different backgrounds and different moral standards. Apparently, John Glenn is, Mr. Goody-Goody, and the other astronauts are running around trying to get women in bed because they say they're astronauts, and there's conflict there. If you've seen the movie, you understand maybe where I'm going. Just keeping those guys by themselves quiet, the lead actors, the guy that calls himself Alan Shepard and John Glenn and whatever the other names were, the other guys burn up in the fake fire that probably climbed out the other side and went off to live on the island where Prince is right now. Somebody coming across this going, this guy was making a lot of sense. He's a lunatic. I'm out of here. I'm just joking. The guys that supposedly were in the fire, like Gus Grissom, that probably climbed out the other side. Then they threw in the charred mannequins. That's, hey, maybe they really did wing them. Somebody's screaming at this presentation right now that Gus Grissom was the guy pushing back. He was going to say something. Gus Grissom, he was leaking truth. Maybe they did char him. I don't know. Well, I don't know. From my I'm concerned, he climbed out the other side, threw in the charred mannequin, and he's on his own private Idaho with David Bowie. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not the point of this presentation. Just the guys in The Right Stuff representing the real characters that were actors who played people like Alan Shepard. That's like, what's that movie? Dude playing a dude, playing another dude. It's like that's what it was. It was 3 levels of fakery for Apollo. Just keeping those guys quiet alone, if they were real, would have been impossible. The personalities, and they had to not worry about just those guys, the main actors in The Right Stuff. A couple 100,000 workers that once in a while would break their compartmentalization and walk around a corner and say, "Aren't you guys supposed to be making something over here called the LEM? It's just a pile of tinfoil." "Oh, we're going to have to keep him quiet." "Well, how do we do that?" "The same old formula. It's worked since Caesar. Pay him, and if that don't work, threaten his broke ass." And in looking at the rest of my list here, where we just have tens of thousands of more people that would have to be paid and threatened, a lot of people will disagree with some things on my list where I'm saying it's obviously fake, and I don't have time to prove it. All I can do is say, we've been over these things enough where if I believe these were real, they wouldn't be on the list. I'm looking at next as we journey through time, through fake events. We come to the John Hinckley Jr., Ronald Reagan fake event. And I don't, there's just things that are impossible coincidences, occurrences. A new one came up recently, or one I should have emphasized when I talked about this not long ago, how the Bushes, the Bush Sr. or H.W. Bush and that family, very close ties to Hinckley Jr.'s father, actually having dinner together shortly before the event. And just one more thing that, it's absurd. It didn't happen. Supposedly got off 6 shots in 1.7 seconds. I like talking about how that can't even be replicated in the Annie Oakley show. Dummies years ago sending me pictures of a guy doing 9 shots in 1 second, but it's his job, and he has a hair trigger on a 1911 semi-automatic with a hair trigger. Zara's running for her life here. Fifi Addy's actually pushing Zara around, which is incredible. Level of professionalism here is off the charts. So it didn't happen. I don't, it's a joke. It was an act. The guy did play in Bedtime for Bonzo. So then you've got all the people involved with the Hilton, the special, think of how ironic that is. The only hotel, or at least the most recent hotel to build a special safety entrance for the president, the Hilton, he uses the special safety exit and entrance, and he almost gets himself killed. You can go into a Waffle House. They have no special safety entrance for the president, and everything's fine. So you have everybody involved with the hotel, the Secret Service, the hospital. This is where you get into the most mind-boggling part of the paid and threatened guys and getting everybody in on it and how impossible this is, to me, are the hospitals. Because they're generally normal people that are working at these hospitals. So they bring Reagan in, all the people that would have, obviously because it's the president, they can limit it to just a few doctors. Okay. In any one example, we can try to rationalize and see how they would compartmentalize everything perfectly and how they could keep everybody perfectly paid and threatened. But they can't do this over and over and over again, event after event after event. So let's move on to another one. So let me look down on my list here as we move through time together. A very special evening, moving through time, looking at the fake events. Now, these next events kind of can be lumped in together. It's the bang events. It's when they started to pull this every 6 months, the fake bang events. And most of them had to do with, I have to use hobo codes like crazy here. They were blank shootings. What's that movie that does? Oh, that's Ferris Bueller. It was blank economics, voodoo economics. We're going to do something like that with blank shootings. It's a word like when you drink something and you drool. You might be sleeping in Ferris Bueller on the desk and you drool. They're drool blank shootings. That's as close as we can get. They mostly involved educational facilities, but there were others. Like the fake event where that guy supposedly chopped that guy's head off in London and ran around posing for the camera with his bloody hands and everything. That's all bull crap. I don't buy any of that crap. But we can lump all these in together. From one of the originals, holds a tender place in my heart, the way Professor Turgidson in Back to School held history sacred. Says, anybody, Mr. Mellon, can you tell me about that little thing called the Korean conflict? Mr. Mellon, is she right? Sacred. These are, because this is how I came into truth, under the tutelage of RV and other prophets that came before me, came into truth through the fake events. So we'll look at them all together. You have remember the 70s TV show Columbo? Remember Columbo? You have Columbo's line. You have the TV show Columbo's line. Remember that one? And then you have Captain Del Capitan, the Captain Hook. And you have the Legolas event in the Disney area of Florida. You have another thing associated with Parkland, of course. What should we call this one? Parkland. We've done that. Do it again. Parkland it is. Okay. We'll get that. We'll get this. Who's going to be the front man for that? That guy? Yeah, we'll get that guy. Yeah, we'll get that genius. And then we got the gambling town event. What happens in a fake event stays in a fake event. That goes along with the paid and threatened. There's a little card. It says Men in Black, quote, what happens in a fake event better stay in a fake event, or we'll be coming for your ass. That's the threatened part. And we got the good night, the GN Sweet Boy event. We got all this shit. We got Chuck P over and over again's list. It's so long, it's like a roll of toilet paper flowing. You could just let it loose. It'll flow out into the other room. There's so many of these fake events. We got tens of thousands of people that would need to be in on it just from this horse shit. And as we travel back together down memory lane, down through the fake events, we're going to just throw a dart and look at one specific part of one specific fake event, because we certainly don't have the hundreds and hundreds of hours it would take to cover all of them, and how it would be an impossible coordination to keep everybody paid and threatened. Let's look at one little thing. And nobody's surprised, I'm going to pick the GN Sweet Boy event. I'm not going to talk about the scholarship. I'm not going to go back to the same thing. I'm not going to talk about the inflated tire. We're going to go to the GN's. It said, GN Sweet Boy. And that's a real laugh, okay? So, yeah, it's a fake laugh, somebody said. No, it's real. I need stress release just like everybody else, like the Oracle and the Matrix. Sati cookies need love just like everything. Matt needs stress relief away from Pornhub just like everybody. So this is a real laugh, okay? Because I don't laugh that much. I guess you don't know how I laugh, but whatever. So if it was real, of course, in any interview, he would have broken down in just a flood of tears every time he said, "The last thing she said to me, here's the text right here on my Nokia flip phone. It says, GN, sweet boy." And he would have started crying, and they would have had to haul him off the interview. He wouldn't have been able to continue. But instead, he told jokes, and he pulled out his, "Chris, you're carrying a picture book. You're carrying a picture book. Show us those pictures." "Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot. She made me this book. Oh, nobody would have made me this book. Alice made me this book, and nobody would have taken these pictures except her, and I loved her so much. But sir, shouldn't you be crying if you loved her so much?" I'm a professional. I'm an anchor at WDBJ. I'm a professional. I don't, that's Denzel Washington and Man on Fire. I'm a professional. I'm getting tired of hearing that from you people. You know what you got up your ass right now? C4. That's what you got up your ass right now, Mr. Hermandad. No, La Hermandad. If you haven't seen Man on Fire, it's a great movie. Or I haven't seen it in a while. So, what the hell is the point of this segment? Oh, the specifics of it's related to the scholarship, okay? But we're going to look at it in a completely different way. I don't know if I've ever done this. He says at noon, body's still warm, toe tag hasn't even been put on yet. He says that we're working with the day of her death. Just a few hours later, they're working with JMU, James Madison University, JMU. And Chris, in an interview, says she loved she loved JMU, Duke for life. Duke Dog is their mascot. He just happens to say that in an interview just hours after the love of his life goes down, gunned down on that boardwalk at 6:45 by the Irish black man, Vesta Lee Flanagan from Tom Cruise and Cocktail. Mr. Flanagan. Who gives him an F? It was Bentley. Bentley from the Jeffersons is the teacher at NYU of Tom Cruise and Cocktail. "Mr. Flanagan, F. You fail my class. Cocktails and dreams. Nobody's going to visit that establishment. F." Sorry. I'll get back to the point. We all need stress relief, just like cookies, just like everybody does. JMU would have had to be in on it, okay? A major, respectable university in the Washington, D.C. area. They can't just use their name. People in the scholarship office of JMU going, "Did you get a call on this?" He just said, "We're looking into a scholarship for an ex-alum, Allison. She's still warm down at the morgue. The toe tag hasn't even been put on yet." The JMU people going, "Were you involved?" "I don't know. Call the provost office." What's that? "I don't know, but call them. Call the chancellor's office." JMU would have had to be in on it. One of the most respected universities in the world, James Madison University, Duke for life. They would have had to be in on it. Think about that. And then the one guy screaming at this, "Well, Matt, did you ever think it's a real event and not all these people are in on it and all these impossible coincidences and she really was killed? And isn't that, let's do Occam's razor." Occam's razor. Occam's razor is a ruse. A what? Intentional attempt to trick me. Occam's razor is put there so we don't think about the way out explanations. Everybody, all the friends around me just parrot Occam's razor. The most simplest that fits in your idiot reality bookends has to be the answer to everything. No, take Occam's razor and throw it out on its ass. Occam's razor ain't shit. How things really go down in this reality is so not complicated, probably very simple, but in a magical sense that we just can't understand. A rewriting of reality in some way, a pen from a Tommy Lee Jones, Will Smith pen from Men in Black. I mean, obviously, do I think they come in with a pen? No. But there's just things, reality, buttons and levers, things we don't understand. Okay? The answer that has to conveniently and comfortably sit within the reality bookends doesn't work anymore. So JMU and their people would have to be in on it. Now, how many people work in that scholarship office? They all got sat down. They all got paid and threatened. It's just this exercise can go on and on and on and over and so on and so on, like the shampoo commercial from '75. It is important to note that the GN Sweet Boy event in Virginia also, just like all the other ones going back through Captain Hook, El Capitan, and others, all got the prestigious Johnson & Johnson, Robert F. Wood Johnson Foundation, the Johnson & Johnson No More Tears Johnson Baby Shampoo, the No More Tears Award, because just like all of them, these people are just rocks, man. I really would want people like Robbie Bobby and Chris, I would want them close in my life. I'd like them invite them to come into my life, because if tough times happen, I need them to be my rock. They don't cry. They don't break down. They're there for their families. Never a tear. It's another J&J No More Tears event. Just to wrap up the fake Bang event section, he said he wasn't coming in, but I can't believe it. He's actually going to make an appearance. He's now coming into the studio, a little bit late, but better late than never, from the Parkland event. He doesn't need a last name. We just know him as David. David, I can't believe you made it. Say a few things. A lot of people at the Quantum of Conscious channel want to hear from you, David. You're an inspiration to all of us, and we all shed a tear for what happened at Parkland. Go ahead, David. Don't be shy. He's now eating off the floor. Get him out of here. He's eating off the floor. It's not a trough. Hog boy. That's what you get for inviting the likes of him. Get him out of here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the producer is putting signs onto the glass again. We have a new sponsor. If I don't work it in, our contract with them, which is a 10-year contract, will be null and void. We'll actually owe them money. So she's screaming at me from the other side of the glass to work in the new sponsor. It is, this hour, brought to you by Michelle Obama's Tuck Guard Concealment. Michelle Obama's Tuck Guard Concealment Undergarments. Michelle Obama's Tuck Guard Concealment Undergarments. Now, there is no script that comes with this that I have to read. The way Howard Stern would read about 1-800-Mattresses. It just goes, you kind of know, those that need this kind of know what it's used for and kind of know what I'm talking about. Apparently, there is another note underneath here. It says the tape that comes with it will not chafe or scrape the skin or cause rashes. And you can actually, for an additional 10% off, to this number, you would tweet Michael. Tweet the word Michael and receive 10% off Michelle Obama's Tuck Guard Concealment Undergarments. Okay, we'll just do one more in-depth look at one event to wrap up the Bang event section. How many people would have to be in on it? Well, we've done this before with this particular event, but it just takes the cake. The gambling town, it's Bueller, Bueller, the gambling town, what happened at the blank harvest and route. Guess what route it is? I'll give you 3 guesses. You're only going to need one, and I guess you might need 2 for anybody that guess Route 66. It's Route 91. If you guess Route 66, I guess that's a good guess for out west, but it's the blank harvest, Bueller, voodoo, economics. So, okay, let's go quick. All right, but there's no need to take time up on this. Some guy up in the 32nd floor, I guess if they made it to 33 it would be too obvious, but all these events are too obvious anyway. But I think it was the 32nd floor, the 31st floor, one off the 33, start shooting a machine gun into the Jason Aldean concert. And the terms of the amount of people that would have to be kind of in on what happened, it's mind-boggling. It's just off the charts. And I wasn't there, so I can't say 100%, but I'm 99 point whatever that it was 100%. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm 99% sure that it was a 100% fake event. Go with that. I like that. I like the way that came out. Professor Turgeston would be proud of that. It's a joke, all right? It's a joke. So in terms of, let's just talk about the first group that to some degree, but not as much as you would think, would have to be in on it. The concert goers, okay? there was enough images. There's no images or videos of anything gory. There's no blood in any pictures, nothing. I mean, just nothing. It's an absolute joke. You'd think they would at least fake some video and images. It's just nothing. But you probably had a real Jason Aldean concert. Probably, maybe not. But if you did, and you set off somebody puts a broom handle out the window of the Mandalay, and they set off party poppers, bang, 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 like a Chinese New Year. I mean, people could probably be convinced, oh, somebody yells machine gun fire. You probably could get real concert goers to run for their lives out the exits. Few people fall down with fake blood packs, but they didn't even have that. There were no gory pictures of ketchup or blood packs or anything that came out of the event. But you can, if I'm at a concert, an outdoor concert, and a guy has a blood pack that just explodes out of his chest, red, or poured ketchup all over himself, and it's dark, and I hear party poppers that sound like, Chinese New Year, that sounds like a machine gun, that sounds like whatever. What did it say in Heartbreak Ridge? AK-47, that's the preferred weapon of your enemy. I could be convinced I heard machine gun fire and a guy's blood pack explodes, his chest explodes right next to me. I would think it's really under attack. I'd turn and run. I'm not going to sit there and analyze it and think it's probably fake. I mean, I would probably run. I mean, if it was that, but maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would, but it doesn't matter. Regular people around us would run for their lives. So you just have to do a few things to get people to think the concert's under attack, to have real concert goers run for their lives and then report, oh, wait, we heard machine gun fire. We were at the concert. We ran. And they all add to the legitimacy of it. So there certainly could have been a real concert. It wouldn't take much to get people to think they're under attack and to run out the exits and then to report to everybody they know that they were at the concert and they were under attack, which would, of course, add to the legitimacy of it. The problem is, of course, when news reports say 500 and some shot, 500 and some. I mean, that would have, where I'm going to go with this. Both of the major hospitals in the Bueller, Los Blanc area would be overwhelmed. They would hear about it on the news. They would call their emergency, put in their emergency tweet, whatever it means. Every hospital worker has to come into the hospital. There's been a mass event. Everybody called in. They would all come in, and then nobody would come in. There would be no blood. Nobody would come in. They'd be, well, on the news, down the road, it's showing on the news here, it's showing 500 and some shot, but there isn't one patient coming into the hospital. Well, yeah, there's a patient. There's a kid with a splinter. He's been sitting in the waiting room for 2 hours. There's a kid. Don't say there's no patients here. There's a kid with a splinter, but nobody's coming in. There would be, if it were real, the entrance and exits, there would be triage all outside the hospital. There would be rivers of blood, rivers. It would have taken a week to clean the hospital up. So how do you keep everybody working at the hospital in on it? And many people have come to me and said, Matt, you don't understand how hospitals work. It would be very reasonable to keep people paid and threatened. Yeah, every single hospital worker at the hospital group. I mean, every single one. Here we go. Let's just do it one more time. Here, doctors, surgeons. That's a doctor, Matt. Don't double count. Orderlies, attendants, lab technicians, X-ray technicians, cleaning staff, residents. They're doctors too, Matt. Don't double count. People coming and going, patients in the other room, the electrical guy changing light bulbs. Everybody, there's just hundreds and hundreds of people that come and go every hour. Maybe not at 3 a.m, but in major hospitals. And we've been over this part before. How about just the billing department for the hospital? Well, they wouldn't need to know. Well, they would be like, well, where's all these? We supposedly treated 400 patients. Or per hospital, 300 and some patients. Even the billing department would be like, well, where's all the coming and going of the revenues and the insurance company dealings for 300 and some people? We're not seeing any spike up for that day. Even the billing department, you'd have to keep quiet. That's at an office 2 blocks down the road. So they would be like, well, there's no activity here on this day. for billing. And did you get a call? No. They were all uninsured. So we got a note here. They all were uninsured. And there's nothing to, and we're not collecting because it was such a horrible mass event. We're not collecting any. Doesn't go to collections, anything like that. There's no charge for anybody. I mean, how do you control all this? Paid and threatened. Okay, maybe if they did one of these events, say they did just the Lost whatever, the gambling town. They planned it for 10 years, and that's all they could come up with. One event every 10 years. Okay, maybe with that level of detail and planning. But they were at the time, guys, they're pulling these events out every 4 or 5 months, something pretty big, or maybe 6 or 7 months. There's little ones that we forget about, like San Bernardino and what was it, Sonoma or Umpqua, whatever that was. Where was that place? That was ridiculous. San Bernardino. I mean, they were doing these all the time. So you understand where I'm going with this. And then you have the whole host of the actors that got on TV. The guy comes waltzing Matilda out of the hospital with an ABC News crew. And I've done this before. Let's just have fun with it one last time. This big oaf, goober kind of guys, and his wife handler is talking for him. And the reporter's like, "So you have 2 bullets lodged on either side of your spine?" And he, "Yes, I do." "Yep, you want to see it?" "Yeah, we'd like to see it on camera." He turns around, pulls his shirt up, and he's got a big bandage so you can't see. So you have 2 bullets lodged, and the wife just steps in, the handler, like, "Well, they say it's inoperable, and they're sending us home." He just walks out. You know, I've had a stiff neck, a pinched nerve type thing, a stiff neck. As a young man in my 20s, I couldn't get out of bed. A pinched nerve in the neck, couldn't get out of bed. 2 bullets shot from 3 football fields away, lodged on either side of the spine. It's so dangerous. It's inoperable, but he waltzes Matilda out of the hospital, and people literally. This was a regular news story on the ABC or the CBS World News, and incredibly, people believed it, and they think I'm crazy when I talk about people potentially being under some sort of a download, far beyond any sort of mind control device or what. They're on a download. There's nobody normal in the world that should have been able to see this guy come out of the hospital, claim he's been in the hospital for 2 days, but it's inoperable, and he's just going to go home, and he walks out. I mean, why didn't they? I was going to say, why did they try to make it look better? Because they know they don't need to. Everybody's on the download. I mean, at least you would think they'd wheel this guy out in some kind of a cart. He'd be wrapped in mummy wraps from head to toe. He'd be, they'd have blood all over them. It's inoperable. They just might as well go home and sit in bed. You can versus sitting in the hospital in bed at $100,000 a day. Go home and sit in bed. And he's like, drooling, and he's just a mess. And he's like, this poor guy, they're just sending him home because nothing can be done. He just walks out. They probably, if a camera crew should have stayed with him, they'd probably show him running full court pickup basketball later that day. Just don't foul me, man. Don't hit me don't hit me in the spine. Don't foul me hard. If I go to the hoop, let me have the layup. Just don't. I got 2 bullets inoperable on either side of the spine. I was involved in that event you saw in the news. If I go to the hoop hard, don't foul me, man. Because it could, maybe one of those bullets will actually lodge into a vertebrae. But yeah, I'm still going to make the pickup basketball game. I'll be there, guys. Okay, just to wrap this one event up, the entire police force, all the firefighters would have been called, all emergency workers, all in on it somehow. I don't know how. No, it's a complete reality breakdown. What does that mean, Matt? I don't know. I'm just saying that the explanation for what happened doesn't fit in the bookends of my normal reality. It can't. There's no possible way. If this was the only thing they planned for 10 years, fine. It's not. It's one of 1,000 almost at this point. Maybe not. But if you look at every little fake thing, yeah, it is one of 1,000. And all the EMTs, everybody in on it, ambulance show up. Like, there's nothing here. So, yes, sir, we're going to need to have a little talk. You work for ambulance crew number 2, and you now see that there's nobody injured here. And we need to have a little talk, and you need to sign some contracts. I mean, I don't know how, but I can't imagine it. It can't work like that time after time. Can't. One guy, one girl at some point, we have this thing called the internet, and you can kind of communicate with people. Some things would get out, even if the bot could track whatever got out down and remove it somehow. It's mind-boggling, guys. And that it's far past hospital staffs. It's the entire police force, entire firefighter force, entire ambulance force. And what about the passerbyers? How many people are coming and going in Vegas? Just coming and going, mulling around. I don't know. It's a complete reality breakdown. Why didn't they choose the Kansas State Fair or something in the middle of nowhere? Well, Matt, the Kansas State Fair is held in Wichita. Whatever. Wichita, Kansas, yeah. But they do this in the middle of one of the most crowded areas you'll ever come across. The Vegas Strip is packed at 3 a.m. And I know the Harvest Festival at Mandalay is a little bit off the Strip, but it is Vegas before CV. It's packed. It's just mind-boggling. Anyway, enough said. Just going into other areas where there would have to be hundreds of thousands of people involved. It's just tiny little things that we haven't covered yet, that they're so small that we probably shouldn't even mention it, like 7-Eleven is a part-time job. That Tuesday event in 2001, just little things like that where, you've seen the Corbett report puts together the mapping of all the interconnections between all of the military contractors. That SAIC San Diego did this, and Lockheed Martin did this, and there's a PNAC here over here, and they all map together. They're all connected. The thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and these contractors that would be involved, the military, everybody surrounding George W. Bush, and he acted like he didn't even know what was going on. He might be the only one that didn't know anything. They might have kept it from him. When we got that look on his face, like, at the Booker Elementary School, the look on his face while I was reading The Pet Goat. I think it's The Pet Goat, not My Pet Goat. But his look was like, oh, shit. What I heard about, they were talking about that in the back room. I was able to walk by outside while Jared was serving on his silver tray and tea set. They actually did that shit. He's not going to be involved in it other than, or he was informed like at the last second. Just had that look on his face. But all of the people that had to be involved, just the wiring up alone of Building 7, 1,000 people involved. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, and not one leak, not one person on his deathbed. Well, who's he going to talk to, Matt? He's going to call. If he calls, this is a good point, though. This is a good point. But you do have this thing called the internet, and I don't know. Who's he going to call, Matt, on his deathbed? See, I was involved in wiring up Building 7, and I want to talk to Anderson Cooper, and Anderson Cooper's going to come in and really report on the story. That is a good point. People that say, well, who are they going to talk to? They'd go to a news media. The news media would never touch it. They'd probably call in the men in black to come in, and even though it was his last day on his deathbed, they put a pillow over his face and take one last day from him. So who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? I agree. Who are you going to ask to cover the news? Wolf Blitzer's Situation Room? You take Erin Burnett out front. Sorry, she likes to do it out front, not out back. Erin Burnett. Don't be surprised. Who knows why they put. She ain't nothing much to look at now. She was in her old CNBC days. Don't be so sure why they title things the way they do. Back to the Future. Look at the main movie poster. It clearly, even to the conscious mind, it says F-U-C-K, the Back to the Future movie poster. Clearly, of course, Elon Musk embeds sex in the word SpaceX. I mean, how pathetic is that? But don't think it's called out. Maybe it's called out front for a reason. It doesn't matter. Who are you going to call if you have this insider information? That's a good point. It doesn't explain how you can keep 1 million people quiet with something called the internet, where things potentially can go viral, even if they have the bots or the facilities today to kind of remove it from the internet, however that would happen. But little things like what the Fed's all about. Tens of thousands of people would have had to have touched that or been in on that at some point. What Ron Paul is a role player. Ron Paul's no hero, or he's just a role player. It's a gigantic high-level animal farm from our perspective, it's a low-level animal farm. We can see through that in a second. But to many people, Ron Paul's fighting for them. But of all the people that come and go in Congress, most of those people at the House of Representatives they're not in on anything. They're just useful idiots that come in and they really believe congressmen are so low level, hundreds and hundreds. How many congressmen are there? There's like 500 in the House, 2-year election cycles. So if anybody starts to sniff reality, anybody starts to sniff truth, they can rig it so they'll never get reelected, whether the election's real or not. It's so easy for them to get rid of a congressperson that's not going to play ball. It would take 6 to 8 years alone just to get a sense as to how things don't work. So a congressman in for 2 or 3 terms, they come in, they have no clue what's going on, no clue. So they're not in on it. But the amount of people that would had to have at least, I'm saying, I guess the whole purpose of talking about Congress was they openly admit, and they're not in on it, they're trying to do right for their constituents because they believe the entire thing is real. They admit that you can't audit the Fed. We don't know who creates the money. They don't know. Congress people don't know. And this is a big thing, Ron Paul, in his role to drop certain truths. You can't audit it. You don't know what banks are involved in it. The famous Greenspan laughing that, we don't answer to any president or anything. So just the number of people that would have started to try to look into it that you have to squash, the number of people that are actually in on it, where is the money printed on a keyboard, how many people are aware of that, and people screaming at this video at this point probably should be like, well, Matt, I can understand you're talking about regular nurses in hospitals and nobody came in injured, and that's one thing to keep that quiet, but now you're talking about, the highest levels of secret societies and initiates coming and going from the Federal Reserve Building. That's not a hard group to keep quiet, Matt. Okay, what turnip truck did you fall off of? And you're right. But all I'm saying is, since Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde Island, there's a lot of people that would have touched something, that would have seen something. Whatever her role is, Catherine Austin Fitz or whatever her name is, I don't exactly know how legitimate she is or not, but she claims that when she was assistant secretary of whatever, she saw black budget things. And there's just how many tens of thousands of people, and nobody says anything other than Catherine Austin Fitz. And that's no problem. They just let her talk through the Solari report or whatever. I'm not condemning it. I don't know her. But am I skeptical? Of course I am skeptical. I think almost everything like that's a farm. I don't believe somebody comes out of the government and is working for us. No, I don't buy it. Do I know for sure? No. Should I be going this far and convicting? No, but I'm just telling you. I'll put it this way: I'm skeptical. I'm suspect. Like Ben Affleck says when he's trying to get that retainer from Good Will Hunting, sends Ben Affleck. Suit don't even fit him. He's got floods on like Chuck Taylor's. Retainer. You want us to pay you cash right now, Mr. Hunting? Is this Hunting? Yeah, Will Hunting. Well, that would be beneficial to your cause to pay me cash. What do you have? I have $70. You're suspect. Anyway, you talk this long. See if you don't get a little giddy. So how about the stock market? We know anybody here would just shake their head. Of course, it's rigged. I can't tell you how many times some bad news has come out over 20 years, some horrible news, and it goes down hundreds and hundreds of 1,000 points. And then they tell you, everybody in the market learns you don't catch a falling knife. You let it settle out, and then you start buying. And then it comes roaring back the next day. These traders must understand there's no natural way it could go down 800 points and then the next day come up 800 points because nobody would jump in after a day of bad news. Your stockbroker would call you and say, Mr. Smith, you wanted to put $400,000 to work in the stock market. It just went down 800 points. You want to just jump in now? No, I don't want to jump in now. There was some bad news. That's why it went down. I'm not just going to jump in and try to time it. This is the number one rule. There's no way it would roar back unless maybe the selling initially was real, but then the Fed just somebody takes out a computer and injects $4 or $5 billion where it needs to go. Then the little cretin traders see the momentum has shifted. They don't have to keep injecting forever. The little cretins that follow the little blips on their screens all day. I'm talking about if anybody did day trades listening to this or whatever for their own family to put food on the table and follows trends, I'm not getting on you. I'm talking about these idiots that like Jim Cramer and the people that do the hedge funds and these monsters, the people that appear on Fast Money, those people. You know, I'm not talking about somebody that trades to put food on the table that may listen to this. But then they'll start jumping and they'll see the trend change and they'll just jump on the back of the king's robes and try to ride it up. But the initial momentum swing is all fake money. Of course it would have to be. Market goes roaring up and then back the next day. Brexit market came roaring back like 3 days later. Maybe the next day, but I don't remember. I know it was very, very soon. Oh, it went down so many points. And then you had all of these, most of them, in my opinion, were in on it. All these doom and gloomers with economic collapse, all put out there to put a ruse onto the truth community. Steve Quayle running around introducing the guerrilla economist who talked for years about and this is 2012, 2013, 2014, all talking about this economic collapse that's inevitable. And if things were real, it would have happened. But it was all part of the scam, all part of the ruse to talk up economic collapse. The Fed already has the entire stock market completely digital. It's all managed by a supercomputer. Nothing collapses unless they want it to collapse. And you have all these pundits and all these people coming on the SGT report for years and years saying economic collapse, and then nothing ever. And then Brexit. The guerrilla economist literally said, if Brexit goes in, that's the end of the dollar. It's the end of the financial system. Once the money starts being cleared out, it will create a domino and a ripple. It's just the end of life as we know it, Brexit. And then the market went, and it roared back. 2 days later, came roaring back. Anyway, that's a whole different topic, guys, how the whole truth community was used and completely played with the economic collapse thing, with one of the main reasons for that being to destroy our credibility amongst the people around us. I talked, and if the economy was set up as we really thought, as they really said, it absolutely would have collapsed a long, long time ago. We didn't realize that anything real was completely replaced by a digital system, basically managed by Fed supercomputers, an injection of money wherever they needed, whenever they needed. So for how we were used and played as of 2011, 12, 13, 14, we're listening to all these. And again, if it was real, they would have all been right. But whether these guys were in on it or not, they completely, many of them were sent out to propagate the end of the dollar, end of the financial system, Bix Weir, Road to Ruta, and all that stuff we listened to for years and years and years. Every one of them promised. Bill Holter, they all promised we're just a week away. This is like 6 years ago. They're saying like we're just weeks away from economic collapse. But then they'd come back on these same shows, like X22 or whatever, and they would never. Actually, he didn't have too many guests when I listened to. There were others that had guests. The first question, if I had a economic show and a special guest said we're just weeks away from economic collapse, if the guy came back a week later, I would say, Bill, I have to start the show by saying it didn't happen, and you need to kind of explain why it didn't happen. They didn't even say it. They just gloss over it. Like we'll just talk about the next date when it's probably going to collapse. Well, why'd you say it was? And when it didn't happen, how do you explain the fact that it didn't happen? No follow-up questions. Anyway, it's all managed inside of a computer at this point. We don't know what they're going to do with it, how they're going to melt it down. The only risk that they have is inflation. There's never a risk that anything's going to fail. They can inject money wherever they want. The only risk that they potentially can't control all aspects of is inflation. All right. But there's no point in studying anything to do with economics, the economy, because it's all managed on a computer, and they can do whatever they want with it, including the stock market. So how many people, the point of this video, how many people are involved in that? How many people are involved in setting up those systems? It's just endless. And to wrap it up, it's beyond what men and women and these idiots that appear on TV, it's beyond what they can do. It's not human. We don't know all the reality buttons and levers they have access to, but the answer, is not going to be between your known reality bookends, or Occam's razor, or anything that we understand as being normal. There's just other things going on that we don't know about. But to wrap up with a pretty interesting high-level concept that we should never forget, I was talking to someone named Mitch last night who has a channel, a very, very, very brilliant, smart, young guy who knows 1,000 times more. I didn't know anything at his age. I was going to say knows 1,000 times more at his age than I did at his age. I didn't know shit about his age. I was trying to score NBA tickets or something at his. So he's way ahead of most of us. I don't even think he's 30 yet. But we're saying, we'll never forget that when I've talked about the lineup many times, when by now you bring out the bad guys, we would know by now who the bad guy is if we were ever going to know. So if the police, I'm not going to do it because I've done it so many times. It's my favorite thing, but I won't do it. When you bring out the Archons and the Anunnaki and the Rockefellers and this long list of bad guys standing in front of you, the reptilians, and this whole list of bad guys standing in front of you in the police lineup through the one-way mirror, if it's 2020 and we still can't point at one of them, we still can't isolate the bad guy, then number one, it proves you never will be able to isolate the bad guy. But even going beyond that, guess who the bad guy is? Us. The collective, at least the collective conscious. Remember, the minions float their perverted, blurry images. Collective conscious makes that real and reflects it back out into reality. So it's the reality itself puts out the negativity and pushing us down the wrong path. There's no bad guy you can point to other than known minions, like the Melvin and Belinda Gates Foundation. That is a known minion. This is somebody I think you could bump into, on the street. I don't think it's a hologram. I think there's really some person in an avatar playing this role of the Melvin and Belinda Gates Foundation. Something there. You can point to that. But they're useful idiots. They don't start the scheme. We don't. Beyond that, there is no bad guy to point to. But remember, at least the collective conscious should be then, because you can't point out at anybody. Then you should point at we point at ourselves. The minions help manage it, but it's collective consciousness that reflects anything that we consider bad back out and cements it into society ourselves. That's ultimately how the reality generation machine works. That's ultimately why they need such a massive ruse and trick. Why do they need to trick us all the time if we aren't responsible for the creation and manifestation of it ourselves? Of course we are. There ain't no bad guy to point to. To point at ourselves. You can't wake anybody up either. You just have to start with yourself, and over time hope that reflects out and in some way influences others. So I guess that's it, guys. Is there anybody after that believes that everybody that's touched a conspiracy, whether I was wrong about even one or two of the things I talked about, is there anybody who believes that of all the millions plus that have touched the massive conspiracy, that they're all, the only way to explain how they stayed quiet was paid well, and if that doesn't work, threatened? Is there anybody holding on to that? Probably a few. Thanks for listening.